And in 1995, I was in a psychiatric institution with major anxiety disorder, panic disorder, PTSD, and depression. So welcome to the conference. I'm so happy you're here.
And so I don't mean to be flip, I really don't, but it's my story and I'm not ashamed, I'm not embarrassed. It's why I'm here with you today.
I am Tami West, and that is my story. Welcome to Consider Yourself Hugged, a place to find comfort and support as you navigate your mental and emotional well-being. So sit back and relax, unless you're driving, and get ready for this week's hug. So this is our last official module. Are you excited?
I am excited. This is a good one. Relationships and communication.
It is a good one. I thought so too. So, and when we said last module, let's remember at the beginning now instead of in the middle. So if you're just joining, we always talk like 15 minutes and then say, oh, by the way, if you're just joining, we do have one more module, but it's just a wrap up. But this is week 9 of positive psychology. So if you have not been with us through the whole thing, I'm sure you'll grab something out of today, but the best thing to do is start from the beginning. And that way you can get all of the show notes and the activity sheets and everything kind of builds. So yeah, here we are. Do you want to go talk a little bit about recapping module 8 before we jump into module 9?
Absolutely.
Let's see. I only wrote, module 8 to me, present moment and mindfulness, was really great. And I know you were super excited. Was that the one that you were super excited about?
Yes, because if it gave some examples, it was kind of very insightful in terms of present moment.
Yeah.
The stress of forward future thinking versus stress that's going on right in the moment, or difficulties, if we're not going to use the word stress, difficulties in the moment versus difficulties that we're pondering on for the future or from yesterday and so forth.
Yeah. I liked it too. The only thing I thought there was a lot that this one built on from prior things that we were already doing, which I thought was good. And I only wrote down 2 notes. So again, if you're just as a refresher, what we've been doing is we start with looking at the activities that we gave you for the prior week and just going over maybe a couple of insights. And then we jump into the present module. So I wrote down 2 things. Number 3 on the activity sheet was about recognizing the cycle of thoughts and emotions. And like you said, asking yourself, what emotion am I having and what thought triggered it? So I'm not going to go into detail. In fact, before we hit record, Michelle and I were talking about it. I had a couple difficult situations this week that made me sort of question my competency or I don't know, just where I fit in, the comparison trap. And so, but what this is really helping me to do is to immediately, as soon as I feel that rush of adrenaline or that surge of frustration or anger, is to stop and say, okay, what was the thought? And then Michelle, and this is what I want to encourage you to do. It didn't tell you in the activity, but I'm hoping you're putting it all together. And this week about relationships will build on that, is to have someone that can help you reframe. So in your worksheet, the thought was, I'll never get anything done today. The emotion was, quote, stress and frustration. Let's just say frustration. And the reframe is, I'll take steps one at a time and I'll get through as much as I can. And so again, there's no reason to give details, but that's having someone who can help you do that is just invaluable. So I called Michelle. And I have to tell you, I felt kind of bad because my husband, I was telling Michelle yesterday, my husband, when I was talking to him about this situation, and he's always going to be on my side, which I appreciate, but it's not in a questioning way. It's just in oh, you're my wife, I'm going to support you. And
yeah, I've got your back. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is nice.
Which is nice. And you're that way too. But Michelle immediately was asking me some questions, and and at the end I was like, okay, you made my world better. So thank you. So have a person who will not just yes, having your back is great, but maybe it's saying know who your people are and what you need when you reach out to those people. Right?
That's a great way to put it.
Because I needed some reframing because I knew I was like, this, I can't do this on my own. And Tim was making me feel better as a wife and as, knowing that he loved me, but it wasn't really helping me reframe. So I wrote that down and then I wrote one other thing, and that was like on number 5, which is entering the state of flow. And so this was just about paying attention to where you lose yourself in time. And I had two. One of them, I was writing curriculum for the company, the EAP company that I work with. And I looked at the clock. I mean, when I'm writing curriculum, then I'm learning new things and I'm looking up new things and I'm watching videos and before I knew it, like 2 hours had passed and I didn't even realize it. So there was that. And then the second thing I wrote was my walks this week they're normally 30 minutes, but they've been 45 minutes. And Tim has actually texted me, "Are you okay?" Because I've been like, it's been cooler and it's been very active. I don't know what, there's a lot of construction going on. I posted a video about this yesterday if y'all want to go watch, but it's just been, I've tried really hard to be more mindful and instead of just like walking, and I do listen to things and sometimes we talk, but I really took a few extra minutes to just pay attention to the sounds and the sights and all that stuff. So that's what I have from last week. Anything with you?
It's the same in terms of like stopping and asking myself, okay, why am I doing this right now? Especially if it's something that I had mentioned, like scrolling on my phone and, um, like other things that I felt like were time wasters, like watching videos, things like and those are good things for me in terms of stress relief at times.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's other things I really should be doing, and stopping and asking myself, what is the emotion right now that's kind of causing me to do this and kind of be avoiding the other thing? And so, like
Yeah.
paying attention to that emotion and taking care of that emotion, it's really kind of also about self-care and taking care of yourself. And like, what do I really need in this moment? Is it reaching out and talking to a friend, or
Me.
yes, twice. I
Sorry,
talked with you.
me. Sorry.
I talked
You
with you twice this
you
week.
have
Yeah.
other friends? Oh my gosh. Sorry, go ahead.
But like that was kind of the thing that was really eye-opening, because there were moments where I stopped and asked myself what I was feeling, that there was something kind of significant going on, and that's the same. You still have to take care of yourself in those moments as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the outcome may be different when you stop and ask yourself, but really asking yourself, what's really going on with me right at this moment? Uh, that was really, really helpful throughout the week, I think.
Yeah, I think it was too. And I think that goes back to as well when we started this module, like so many of the things I really think are things we kind of know we should be doing, but not committing to them, not engaging in them. And so doing this week by week by week has encouraged us to do that. And now it's becoming part of our lives and habits that we knew we should be doing. And now we're really doing it, which
Well,
makes a big difference.
it does. Doing it daily does make a big difference, because again, like we're going to talk today about gratitude journals. I think like a lot of people, you've heard that word and maybe done it once or twice, but doing it consistently can make a difference.
I'm thinking in the future when we do this, um, or when I teach it, because I think we're both going to like take the quiz, the assessment that goes at the end, and just become certified in it just because we did the work, so we might as well. But the fact that we're doing this gratitude journal at the end, I think I'd rather move it up to the beginning, because if there's something that we're supposed to be doing that's very active like that, I want it to be at the beginning so that there's a little bit of pressure to keep doing it while you're physically like in the module, because we know what can happen is that when you get to the last one, it's like, okay, well, this is the last one, so I'm done now. And if you haven't been practicing those things, you may not keep doing it.
And it's one of the most powerful techniques for positive mindset. And so doing it at the beginning, I think would be really helpful overall.
Yeah, I'm going to add one more thing. I was writing this yesterday, but I never posted it. So maybe I'll just put it in today. When I was struggling with what I talked to you about yesterday, I was looking for a podcast. We love podcasts. You know, we do a podcast, but we love podcasts. And so I was looking for a podcast on that topic, and I found one, and I was like, okay, it's 6 minutes. I didn't really care how long it was, but I found it. It came up on the top. And so I listened to it, and he did a little introduction, and then he said, okay, now there was like some soft music. Close your eyes, take a breath. And so it was through this whole like mindfulness, staying in the moment. But this analogy just popped in my head. And I thought, I think sometimes the reason things like that don't work to help you with a specific issue, it's like if I have a splinter in my finger and you tell me to put some numbing agent and a Band-Aid and, you know, maybe even take some ibuprofen and it's going to feel better. But until I get that splinter out there, so it's, we still have to, all of this is helping the mindfulness. I am glad a little bit that that did come closer to the end, because we need to dig in and do all these things, like asking ourselves, what am I thinking and why am I feeling that way? And how can I incorporate more positive things, or what thoughts? Because if we don't dig in and figure out what the splinters are that are making us feel bad, then just breathing is just not going to help.
Right, right. I mean, like mindfulness is meant to help us stay calm while we handle like the concern, like that type of thing. Yeah, it isn't intended for us to ignore the concern.
No. And I think it's a good way too to partner up classical psychology with positive psychology. That if you all, I'm assuming you're here in module 9, you might remember this. Classical psychology asks the question, what's wrong in your life? What's the splinter? How can we fix it? Which, yes, we need that. But then positive psychology is what's good in my life? What gives me joy? And how can I add more of that? And the two together can make us really healthy people. So, all right, well, let's talk about module 9. Communication, gratitude, and relationships. Do you want to start off with anything? Do you want me to jump in? What do you want to do?
You go. I
Okay.
feel like I always say that, but yeah, you go.
No, it's okay. As y'all can tell, we hit record before we start talking at all, because some of our best conversations happen just while. So that's why we don't attempt to organize this, because if we do, it's just not, some of the natural things don't flow out. So that's why we do it that way. We do that on purpose. But I wanted to make sure that we keep going back to the PERMA model to see like where we are, right? And the PERMA model of positive psychology is positive emotions, which has been really every session. You know, how can we have more positive emotions? And then the E is engagement, which was a lot of what we did last time, right? Like flow and when you lose track of time. Today is big time R, relationships, which includes the way we communicate and having gratitude for people. And then we did 1 or 2 sessions on the M was meaning and the A was accomplishments. And that kind of permeated 2 or 3 of the modules that we did before. I have a bunch of things highlighted. Like Michelle and I have the official module, and that's not what we send out to you all, because we process it and we're allowed to do that. It's our discretion. But when I tell her like page 1 or 2, but I loved on page 1 in our introduction part. So Diner and Seligman, which were 2 of the original positive psychology field researchers, this was so powerful to me. A quote from them: relationships are necessary but not sufficient to guarantee increased happiness. And this is the really important part. While they do not guarantee happiness, it is impossible to maintain happiness without them. So, meaning, this is the way I took it, Michelle. I don't know about you, but like I can't count on you or Tim or my children to provide me happiness. It's not that. But if I don't have positive relationships, then I'm pretty much guaranteed that I'm not going to be happy if I don't have any positive relationships.
No, I definitely took it the same way, and that and like it's interesting. I think it'll be an interesting conversation like between the two of us, because I'm definitely more of an introvert. You're more of an extrovert. And so like relationship needs I do feel like are slightly different, but there's the core that's the same. And so like in reading this, it's like, okay, can an introvert be completely happy without any relationships? No, they still can't.
Are you sure?
I mean, I think they can be probably they can make it longer than extroverts can.
I think so. Well, in full, backing up just a minute though, because in full disclosure, I am more extroverted than you, but I'm not an extrovert. And I don't think I knew that as much until the pandemic and how happy I was to just be. But we also talked about the fact, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. For me anyway, when I think about like doing things socially or going or making, having relationships, it's like, ugh. But I think a lot of that is I'm focusing too much on what's negative about any relationships in my world, and I forget about the really positive parts.
I think that with you mentioned the pandemic, and I thought, telehealth from home, that you would think an introvert would love that. But I missed my coworkers, and I realized that, oh, well, you're not quite as much of an introvert as you think. But I think really introvert, extrovert just means introverts do need alone time to refuel, re-energize,
Yeah,
and extroverts need people to refuel and re-energize. So it doesn't mean either way that you always want to be around people or that you never want to be around people. It's a balance
it
with
is.
that. So
Yeah, and it's good you clarified that because and I think that's what makes me more of an introvert than I knew before is I really do need that alone time. And for a long time, including now, I don't have a lot of it. Um, but and I've noticed, since I started working, um, you all might know I started working full time as a training facilitator with an EAP company. And I still have my own speaking business, but we meet on Teams. So we meet throughout the week when we need to, and then we meet as a group once a week. And we do most of our trainings we do virtually. And I'm beginning to see how people that like you who worked with people and then went to virtual, I can see now how they kind of missed that because we were supposed to have a retreat, like a live retreat this past week, and it got canceled. So we did it virtually. And I was like, man, I wish we were together because
mhm.
it's hard when we're on this screen like this to really get to know people.
Yeah, and I really love like we have lunch now at work on Thursdays. We have a team lunch where we all
Really?
just try to make time to be back at the office. I'm always at the office, but a lot of my coworkers are out in the community, and we just try to have lunch together, and I really enjoy that. So there is something definitely to be said for being able to be with people in person.
There is. And I think I'm hoping that what we're doing by bringing this to light is making you think, you, our listeners and watchers, like, oh, well, maybe there is something to be said for because every webinar that I teach for the EAP company, everyone that has to do with mental health, emotions, things like that, talk about connecting with people, every single one of them. So I'm like, okay, there must be something to this. So let's work on it. And I know there are a couple of studies. Um, Two conclusions with these studies. The first is that our life choices can determine how happy we become. And the second is that happy people are more likely to socialize with other people. And then it went on just a little bit to say, by analyzing the data of probably the longest study in the history of psychology, which was a Harvard study, I'll post that. It's possible to establish that loving and being loved plays a primordial role in constant development and happy old age. I used to not really think too much about old age, like, because, I used to be young. But now it's like, okay, let's think about this
We
role.
all did. We all did. But
Like, let's time to think about this role. So if you are watching, listening, and you're 20, or you're even 30, or you're even 40, or I mean, it's a good time now to think about it because these relationships, I watch some of my friends that have had Michelle and I have known each other for, I don't know, is it 20? Is it 20 years? I think it's
yeah,
20. No, it's
yeah.
longer. No, no. Tim and I have been married for 21 years.
Oh, I knew you a couple years before you guys got married.
So 22, 23 years
Yeah.
we've been friends. That's amazing. And I see some of my friends who are in their 60s and 70s, and they've had the same friends since they were younger. Now, it doesn't mean they don't have any other friends, but so it's a good time to think about it now because the longer you know people, the more memories you have to build on,
I
you
think
know?
too, like the the more I don't how do I want to say this? Authentic relationships. I think that, we are able to talk with each other and share with each other and um ask each other's honest opinions where you don't necessarily have that kind of bond with someone you just met. Usually. I mean, you
Yes.
could, but I mean, and I think when you've known someone longer, like where their heart is. Like if you were to tell me something hard, I know it's because you love me, not because you're trying to be negative. So,
Hmm. That is so true. Well, and you talked recently about us doing a girls thing together. As soon as we're off here, we're planning that because
okay, that'd be
it
great.
takes commitment too, right? It
Mhm.
takes effort, it takes commitment, not in a bad way, but you got to find time for it. And you having said that, I'm going to jump ahead a little. It doesn't mean we can't come back, but part of this session is about having gratitude in relationships. And in a minute, we're going to talk about a gratitude letter, but I still want to mention this just because you just said something. So when we get to the gratitude letter, I'm going to tell you all about this app that my son developed called Autobiography. Um, and it is part of it, you can write a gratitude letter. So I did one for Michelle, but I just wanted to tell, it's AI who writes it for you. So it just asks you questions and it writes it for you. But I wanted to read something that AI wrote about our friendship. It says their friendship during this time, and this was, hang on just a minute. This was the pandemic time, is what it's talking about. Okay, their friendship during this time was characterized by vulnerability and honesty. They created a safe space where they could share their struggles without judgment, offering each other the understanding that comes from shared experiences. This openness allowed them to provide tailored support and advice, drawing from both personal experiences and professional knowledge. And so I pulled that up before we came on because as we get into the gratitude letter in just a little bit, it talks about how, we all can express gratitude to other people, but we don't.
Yeah,
We
that
just
is, yes,
we
yes.
just don't tend to do that. And I was only able to write, I ran out of room. I was only able to write like five, my husband, three kids, you, and like two of my other friends. Um, but then it cut me off. So now I don't know what to do. And I don't like to write, but so should we talk about gratitude then?
Yes.
Okay. So the definition that is given here, you can tell me what you think about this. Um, Gratitude has several definitions within the field of positive psychology, but it can be summarized as it is a conscious, positive emotion one can experience when feeling thankful for something or someone. I mean, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I like that definition.
And then it goes forward and talks about it is a selfless act. It is done unconditionally to show appreciation, not because someone is looking for something in return. And I just thought that was really beautiful. I'm just going to talk about a few more things about gratitude. And then do you want to talk about the journal part?
Yes, I will talk about the journal part. And I have a
Okay.
couple things to say about gratitude too.
Oh,
Sorry.
talk then. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, this very much ties into the other modules and like how we've talked about like positive psychology in the sense that it's a lot about mindset. And so when you're grateful, when you're doing the journal, like we're going to talk about, it kind of shifts the focus of attention in terms of thoughts. And I can remember um, an interview. I'm going to give two examples. I saw an interview with Oprah Winfrey, the most
Can you send me that?
famous. Yeah. Yes, I will
Whatever it
find it.
is. Can you send it to
It's
me? Okay.
so it was an interview with her about how she got through a trial. She was if you remember, it was a long time ago, but she was sued by the beef industry. Do you remember that? Like
Mm-mm.
she made a statement, I believe, and don't quote me on this, I believe it was about mad cow disease or something very like just
That
not,
is ringing a bell.
yeah, not necessarily serious about it, but she's such a powerful woman that they came back and said that she had damaged the industry, and then there was a lawsuit about it. And she was talking about, she was in Texas for the lawsuit, and she was talking about her mindset and how like thankful she is for an attitude of gratitude. Because even while she was there, and I think she would do like shows during the day part of the time and go to court, but she was very thankful for, oh, look at this, cute place I have to stay here, and just always like focusing on the gratitude of the positives in the situation, not ignoring the negative. She was
Yeah.
still doing all the things and showing up and doing the things she needed to, but still being thankful for the positives around her. And I mentioned this in an earlier podcast about the positive psychology modules is like reading The Nightingale during 2020
Mhm.
really helped me be grateful for all of the things, the comforts that
Wow.
like I had at the time. There was a lot of loss during that time. Nobody could go anywhere. You couldn't, our world changed,
Yeah.
but it didn't change to the degree that people's lives have changed in the past due to different things. And so the Nightingale's about World War II and everything that was going on in Europe. And so
I'll post that too because it is my favorite book.
yes. And so like it just changes entire demeanor when you're thinking about, okay, I have this. I'm so thankful for this. Even if it's like running warm
Hot
water.
water. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
So
think
those things can I mean, for us too, the Bible even tells us in all things be grateful and still feel
mhm.
joy. So those things can coexist. It's not the rose-colored glasses or toxic positivity, but we can still be grateful in the midst of difficult situations.
Difficult. Yeah, it doesn't make them not difficult, but it just means that there are things that we're joyous about during that time.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. Was there, was that it? Was that all you were saying about that? I thought you told me there were a couple things you were, oh, the Oprah and the Nightingale.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I had. Sorry.
No, that's not what I meant.
You should be grateful. No, I'm just kidding.
That is not what I
I'm
meant.
sorry.
Well, and it just, we talked about just even moving here in this house where we used to live in the big, beautiful woods, and now we live in the little tiny plot. Um, but I mean, there's so many things to be grateful to be
You have a
here.
very cute house.
It
Which is
is, and
very
it's
cute.
small and it's easy to maintain. Um, so Michelle's going to talk about the gratitude journal, but let me tell you that the study and the benefits too. This poll was about people who had a gratitude journal versus those who didn't. And basically, as some bullet points, the people who kept a gratitude journal, I don't understand this part, were more willing to engage in sporting activities. I'm not doing that no matter how long I keep a journal. It's
Yeah,
just,
that completely like blew my mind too. I'm like,
I know.
what was that study?
Maybe if you're 20, but no, I'm no. Um, they and because they were active, they reported less physical pain, which by the way, Michelle and I both try to stay active. Michelle works out a lot. Um, I walk and get on my bike, but did I tell you my knee is like swelling up like a balloon again? Oh,
No.
so yeah, I've stopped the bike for about 2 weeks, but I'm going Tuesday because years ago I was supposed to have loose cartilage removed from running on pavement for so long. And then I didn't, but I have an appointment on Tuesday. So yeah, staying active helps you have less physical pain. But these are some other things. People who participated in some type of gratitude journal or exercise made more new friends. I don't need new friends, but anyway, we'll keep going. They had a greater
What?
ability. Well, I mean, I have great friends. I'm not saying that I'm not open to new friends, but I have very good friends as it is. So I'm not in the market, at least not right now. We'll see. We'll see how it goes with you and me. And then okay, sorry. I don't know why this is turning into that. All right. Um Oh, and okay, I see where. So when it's talking about engaging in sporty activities, therefore less pain, and then more new friends, therefore being more sociable improves your overall well-being. And then some other things, a greater ability to offer emotional support to someone else who has problems, feel less frustrated during conflict, more open, more optimistic, can more easily ignore feelings of envy. And so, overall, the goals of doing something like a gratitude journal are to help you have more positive emotions and to help you develop deeper relationships. So, let's talk about the gratitude journal
Yeah.
or whatever you
And
want
I
to talk
said, I feel like so it can really be a fun thing. It can be something that you make whatever you want. You can go and get some cute little journal that makes you happy just to see it. You can type it if I mean whatever makes you the happiest. It can really be anything. And like with a gratitude journal, it isn't something that is meant to stress you out. That's important thing. Like,
about. Right.
you do the journal and it's writing it down is definitely one way to do it. Doing it, just kind of thinking through it in the morning is another way to do it. Whichever way brings the most positivity and doesn't become something that is another um, stressor in your life. That's kind of what we're looking for here. And so with the journal, like you start out day one and you can pick, there is no wrong way to do it. You can pick, I'm going to always list 3 things I'm grateful for. I'm going to list 5 things that I'm grateful for. And as you think of things, like one of the things I noticed with the gratitude journal is as I think of things, I do feel the joy when I'm thinking about those things and I am being grateful for them. And you do want to pick, um, somewhat different things. Like as you do a gratitude journal, you can't necessarily you don't want to necessarily always put the same thing on the journal. You could if
I
it
can't
brings you
put
joy.
I can't
Yeah.
put hot water every single day.
I mean, you could if it brings you joy. The purpose of the gratitude journal is for, that positive emotion to help foster that. So if putting the same 3 things on it every day does that, then absolutely. But in general, like expanding what kind of things, and at the same time, pulling more things into your life that do bring you joy, that
Mhm.
do bring you gratitude. Like there are certain things that I love that I don't necessarily take time to do unless I'm being intentional about them.
Right.
And
Or
so, like,
noticing to begin with,
yes,
noticing that there was something that made you happy and you never really noticed it before.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And noticing as well, kind of like one of the really important points that you've made several times is like things can coexist. Like you can be grateful for something while also like maybe having a worry about it. Those
Mhm.
2 things can coexist. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm a little anxious about it, but those two things still can coexist. So, and doing it daily, again, whether you're writing it down or whether you're doing it, just thinking through it,
Mhm.
particularly for me, I find at the start of the day can really make a huge difference.
So you think about those things in the start of the day.
I do. Yes.
I haven't looked. I was wondering, like, I don't so much like just writing, like physically writing. I find my mind gets frustrated because I want to already be at the end. Although maybe that's something that I need to work on. But I do like I have this, if you're watching, you can see it. If not, this is not a journal, it's a little planner. I started keeping a paper planner again because I was struggling with, my official work calendar and then my regular calendar, and I just needed some place to have everything together. And I kind of like it, but I'm wondering, let's look around for some cute little journals or other journaling ideas because I'm tempted to just do it in the How We Feel app because there's a place to journal, but there might be something about writing it.
I had a coworker who I got stopped by her office, and she had all these really cute things and like all these really cute journals. And she said that she loved paper source. And so there are paper source stores, and there's
That's
an
a what?
online
That's a
store
business.
that's a brand, yes.
Okay.
And Barnes and Noble has paper source products. And again, it may not, like a cute journal may not be something that brings you joy that would be on your gratitude journal, but if it is, I mean, it could definitely help. It's kind of like my Snoopy to-do list. I think I showed you.
Did you show me again? Because I don't remember.
Can you see him?
Oh, that's so cute. Now, there you
Mhm.
go. There. Take a
Oh,
picture of it and send it to me.
okay. And so, like, seeing that just makes me happy when I'm doing my to-do list. So,
That that's an important thing. I just did a webinar for the EAP, first time I've done it on New Year's resolutions yesterday, and it was so much fun. And one of the things about resolutions, one of the pieces of advice that I did a little research, before I did it, and there was something called um I can't remember there's a name. I guess it doesn't matter. Anyway, the premise is to take something that you don't really want to do, like maybe exercise. Let's say that was the example, and you pair it with something that you do like, which is, I was doing that and I didn't realize it was like this method. It has a name, but so when I would get on the bike, I have an iPad and I would watch Grey's Anatomy. So
mhm.
I was really looking at it more of, I'm going to go watch Grey's Anatomy instead of, oh, I have to go get on the bike. So a to-do list is like, meh, it's mundane here. But when you have something cute to look at and you get to write it on your Snoopy, then it gives you a sense of happiness. So instead of saying I'm doing my to-do list, you're like, I'm going to go write on my Snoopy.
Yes, yeah. And so, like, the app is also, though, very colorful, very fun to look at. So, I mean,
Yes.
so whichever just works best for you.
Yeah, I'm bending over here looking because now I'm dying to know what this, I printed it out. It's called
Mm.
Temptation bundling. So like, I don't really remember why it's called. It's just linking an unpleasurable activity with a pleasurable activity. Sorry. I have a filing cabinet. I didn't used to have a filing cabinet, but I do now. That's beside the point. All right.
Not if it brings you joy.
Yeah. Well, I don't print out a lot of things, but sometimes, like if I'm doing virtual webinars and I have something I want to read, I don't want to read it on my screen, So then I print it out and I have folders. I used to just have stuff everywhere. So organization made me a little happier, I have to say.
Oh, you can get like like different colored folders.
Well, I should have done that, but I was cheap. So I just bought the plain ones. I I do have some colored folders, but
mine's not different colors either because I really just thought of that, but I might make. Okay. All right, moving on.
now I have to go get well, this is all about things that make you happy, and colored folders are cute.
So
So
this wasn't a squirrel moment. I was
no, I
afraid
don't
it was a
think
squirrel.
so.
Okay.
I
All
don't think so. I mean, I'm in here all day long, almost every day, unless I'm traveling or out speaking somewhere. So if I can increase the cute factor,
Do you think
yeah,
the picture has made a difference that you
I
have
do.
hung in front of you? Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. And I have a space on the other side that needs a vertical picture. So I'm trying to, and the one over here, I posted it before and showed you it's an ocean. What about you?
Yes, it's definitely made a difference. I have some that I need to hang up, but I put like several of the smaller pictures kind of across my desk until I can get everything hung up. And I actually got a paper source. It's a calendar, but it was of different Monet paintings. And so I've got one of those, like my favorite one, up as well, so I can look at. So
I'm inspired again. All right. I need to get back to doing a few more things. It's better, but there's still more things I could do. I have a lot of crap on me. It's like I have, okay, then we are squirreling now. But on this side, I have my recording spot, which is usually for the EAP thing. And then on the other spot, I have all my business for my own speaking. So I have like a business over here and a business over here, and it is a little bit messy. Okay, so anyway, squirrel. So we have talked about relationships and gratitude. Really, the last couple of things. The gratitude letter I wanted to read that. That's when I talked about the autobiography, which I will post. But just writing a letter of gratitude, and if you feel comfortable doing it. And what I read before, or I mentioned it, was it says expressing gratitude creates a win-win situation for everyone since it produces positive emotion, whether you're giving or receiving. Unfortunately, I love the way this was worded. We rarely take advantage of this by expressing gratitude to the people in our lives. So the tip is it should take less than 20 minutes to think of a friend, a family member, a colleague, and just write a letter of gratitude. Speak it into your phone if you don't want to write. The autobiography app, I'll share that with you. My son doesn't own the company anymore, so I can't really do anything more than just send you to the link. But just we'll put a few tips in there in the show notes about some things that might make it a little bit easier for you. Okay, are we done with gratitude?
I think so.
I think we are. Then the last thing to have more positive relationships is to communicate with people. I hate to say better, but you know what I mean. Um, any thoughts about that? Before we
I wasn't sure about this section for the reason
Me
that I mean,
too, me too. Okay, go ahead.
so I think that I think it is difficult to know. Like I feel like these are things that come fairly naturally, some of those, and I just didn't I mean, it was things like ask questions about the other person and and then there was some things too about like compliment the other person, and I don't know, it was just not like I was more uncertain about this section. What did you think?
So you were uncertain in that you weren't sure you really got a lot of great new information. Like it was kind of duh, maybe.
Um, I don't know. It just seemed a little off in terms of if I was talking with someone about how to communicate better. I
Hmm.
think that there are other things I probably would have discussed versus what was in this section.
Like what? Nothing like putting you on the spot.
Well, I think that asking questions is important, but at the same time, like um, Yeah.
Well, let's do this. I'll tell you what I was a little unsure about. And then, well, first, I'll just tell you a few points that I did take away from it. And then what I was frustrated about, and then you can throw in anything that you would have put in there. One thing that, improving your communication skills and which can have produce better relationships, and then overall increase the happiness and well-being in your life. And so there are a few bullet points. I thought it was interesting that it started off by saying, like, from the get-go, other than just the intro about having communication leading to better relationships. But the first thing was criticism is often unnecessary in relationships. And I was like, okay. So let me just read. We all tend to want to criticize. But criticizing the people around you will never get them to change. It gets you nowhere. You put people on the defensive and they shut down. You hurt their self-esteem and they usually end up resenting you. So it's almost impossible to achieve any change through criticism. And I was like, okay, well then what? Well, so I did tend to agree that when I liked, like my friend Donna Clark Love, who you have met via Zoom, I think. Didn't we meet a couple times? Maybe, maybe not. She's been on the show before, but we wrote a book together for those of you, and I'll post a link to her. But she does a lot of speaking. She's a bullying expert, like a workplace bullying expert. And when she was on the show, and in the book, she says, ask yourself 3 questions before you speak up to people. And it's, does this need to be said? Does it need to be said now? And does it need to be said by me? And I think those are really good questions. So the only thing is, so when it says criticism is often unnecessary, I think it's a good idea to get in the habit of asking yourself those questions before we just go into telling somebody what they're doing is wrong, or they're bad, or they're this, or they're that. So then the question is, well, then if I disagree, should I just shut up? And the advice was no, but there are better ways to do it than just to come right out and say you're wrong. So I was okay with that. Were you okay with that?
So I think yes, I was okay with that, but at the same time, like by nature, like that's not, like, I don't know that that has ever been a struggle for me. So like, as I was reading that,
Oh, you
I
mean
was
being
like, I
critical?
thought, like, who's doing this? You know? I mean, I understand what they're saying, like,
Yeah.
and obviously that can be an obstacle. Um, and reframing how you're giving suggestions, but at the same time, like, it's very much like Donna was saying, like, does this need to be said by me? Has this person asked me for my opinion or advice or instruction? Does this person even care, like,
Yeah.
what I think about this? Like, there's a lot of things like that. So
I guess I was thinking in it of light, for example, with maybe spouses, or like, do I really need to criticize Tim about? I'm not a critical person by nature either, but I think there are a lot of people who, you know, may just feel like if they see something wrong, they just need to speak up. And the question is, do I? And if I am, how do I do it?
And, I just kind of realized something else. I think that sometimes this can be dragged into like Christian friendships.
Go there. Go there.
I don't know I don't know if you want me to, but like, I do think sometimes there is a perspective in Christian friendships that if you think you're speaking from the Lord, what what the Lord is telling you to say, that you can say things that and so the question is what you're saying biblical? Is what you're saying your opinion based on your
Some
past
verse that you,
experience?
oh,
Yeah, or your understanding, right? But you know, is it really correcting someone spiritually in love, or is it criticism?
Oh boy. Let's put this into another segment all by itself because I think that's huge. I really do. I think how and when and why to speak up or criticize from lots of different perspectives is an entire session.
Yeah, I agree. It could be a lot. It can be a lot. And there can be positive that comes from it. There can be a lot of damage that can come from it.
That's right. I have so many things I want to say, but I'm not going to. All right. Just because, I mean, it really gets my mind spinning in a bunch of different ways. But what we're trying to do here is increase positive in relationships. So I'm going to keep going. You talk about asking people questions, which I think, if you're in a conversation, so often, and this I think is a basics of communication, but so often people are waiting for you to finish your story so they can share their story. We're really trying to be very mindful and intent about asking questions. And people, I mean, if I do that to people, they seem kind of shocked and really happy, like, oh, like that you want to know. But here's where I falter, and I circled it in the module. So it says ask questions and then make a mental note of the answers. So if we're just asking the questions to just seem like we're interested and we don't really listen and remember, that's almost worse than not having ever asked the question. Because then when you're talking about it later and you don't remember, and they're like, we just talked about that and you asked me. So making a mental note to remember what they said as best you can. Now, I'm very, everybody knows, Michelle knows, she'll say, well, don't you remember that time when we had a big lockdown at the school and Tim was sick and they couldn't find you at the school? I'm like, nope, I don't really remember
Well,
it.
they wouldn't find
Or
you
wouldn't
because it was a
find me.
lockdown. Yeah.
Right. But I'm like, yeah, that seems like I should have remembered that. So I think there are truly, some people who have some memory issues, but as best we can, if we're going to show an interest in people, try to do it because you really are interested and you really do want to get to know them. I mean, I thought that was good advice. What about you?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And it didn't touch on this, but I think that it's also important when we're talking about like improving communication to respect the fact that people are at different places. If someone doesn't receive a question well, that is not something about you. It could just be where they, you know, are at the moment. Like I'll use myself as an example. I can sometimes be, I don't know if it's overwhelmed, overstimulated, if there's multiple people, like in a social setting, if there's multiple people, lots of people talking, lots of people interacting, I can feel a little bit overwhelmed and be a little more reserved in that setting for sure. Because, I've talked about social anxiety when I was young before, and it's so much better, but I can still be overwhelmed in that situation. So if I'm not as conversive with someone in that situation as I would be if it were just me and them one on one, that has nothing to do with them and everything to do with kind of what's going on with me inside at that moment.
That's really good
And
advice or
yeah,
insight.
so paying attention to that, and like if you are the person who is overwhelmed, being able to verbalize that a little bit, like, oh, there's a lot going on right now, that type of thing. Because I have had to ask people to repeat a question before, not because I wasn't listening to them, just because there was so much
All the
going on.
voices.
Yeah, that it was just, I was a little like overwhelmed. So,
That's really important, because we tend to judge communication styles based on like ours,
mhm.
right? Like I expect you to engage the same way, or you expect me to. So we tend to kind of think, well, if I would want this, you would want this. But like read the room, read the person, or just understand. That's really good. That's really good. Okay, so here's the part that I did not love. And but if I didn't love it, well, there are two parts. So that, we'll put a few other tips that come from the module as well. Just some tips to think about when you're building relationships and communicating, and there'll be the activities for you to try. So we'll post that. But when it comes to then, how do I manage a disagreement or conflict or talk to somebody? So this part I liked. Okay, so these are, well, maybe not all of them, but there were these 7 steps, which I thought were pretty good. These were over on page 9. When you're faced with a conflict, number 1, don't give in to your first impulse. Let that little bit of irritation pass before you start to express yourself. Super important. Take a moment. Number 2, if it's anger, control your anger. You have nothing to gain from acting on it. And so I did like that. Control your, anger is an emotion, and it's a prime emotion. So it might happen before you even know it, but acting on it is different. I'm just going to keep reading them, Michelle, unless you want to interject. Number 3, let the other person express themselves first. I don't know. I don't know. This doesn't give me, let them explain the issue they have without interrupting. I don't know. I depends on what's happening here. So whoever seems to have the issue, I guess, would go first. Number 4, look for areas within the conflict where you may see eye to eye. Try to find some common ground. And this prevents us from thinking the other person sucks in all areas of life. There's nothing we have in common.
Mhm.
Trying to realize there's something we have in common. Number 5, be honest. Know how to point out your faults and acknowledge your mistakes. The person you are speaking to will be pleasantly surprised because very few people react like this. Maybe. I don't know. Number 6, tell the person you are going to correct your mistakes. This will take away any power they have to blame you in the future. Simply take accountability for your mistakes and work on correcting them. And number 7, thank them for taking time to talk and ask them not to hesitate to share their concerns and complaints with you in the future. So, yes, yes to most of that. Number 6 was Michelle, she knows I don't like to be wrong or make mistakes just because of the perfectionism that I used to battle. But yesterday there was a work issue, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I think, again, it's all about taking so long to really try. I had a coworker and we both had done something on the calendar, and we did kind of screw up. I mean, we didn't screw up as far as what we did, but we screwed up in making changes to the calendar, and we weren't thinking how they were going to affect the person who sent out emails. And she was not happy. And my initial, because her response was over Teams, and it was like, oh, she's mad.
Which
Now,
is hard when it's written because you don't know the
well, you
tone.
don't know, but I knew. I mean, you know,
Okay.
yeah, you could tell she was, I mean, she was kind of forward about it, but kind of, it was, and immediately I felt that first surge of wanting to not be wrong. And, we tend to not want people to be mad at us and all these things. But then it took me a minute and I was like, we screwed up. And so we got on a call and we talked about it. And I was like, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. You're totally right. And it felt good. It was like, I'm sorry. You're right. You've already told us once. We did it again. Let's just fix it. And I'm sorry. It won't happen again. And then she started apologizing to me. I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. And I'm like, well, you should be. So, but I think it feels liberating to know that you're not perfect.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that it comes and increases with confidence. I think when
Mhm.
you're new at something, it can be a little harder, but it's still a good thing to do. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, especially for relationship communication wise.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I like that. Um, then I don't know.
Is the next part the part you weren't sure about?
Yeah. Jeez. Okay. And as we've done before, we clipped out a little bit, and now you're going to just have to wonder what we're laughing about. But yeah. So we were trying to figure out, we were just saying like, okay, if there's part of it we don't like, why are we even going to talk about it? But since we've told you that we're part of it we didn't like, we at least want to tell you the part that we did not love is that the last part of this, like, how do I have a conversation that's conflict? How do I talk to somebody about their mistakes? And the advice was to start by criticizing yourself.
Yeah, I'm not going to criticize myself. That part was just ridiculous.
What? Like taking accountability for your mistakes is fine, or trying to find common ground is fine, but start by criticizing yourself.
I mean, what does that look like? I'm so stupid.
I'm I know I'm normally an idiot, but today you're an idiot. I mean, what? We're like, no, I don't. Anyway, gave an example and we just didn't like it. So let's just leave it at that. And we're going to tell you how we would do it. Now, so I have a scripting tool, but they do talk about giving the other person a compliment. And it says start with a compliment. And I'm still not loving that. I think that there's a point for that, and I'll share that. But Michelle started to share something with me about her mom, but I asked her if she would share it with you. So,
So I think that like we understand like the advice of giving a compliment. You're trying to, build a relationship, and you're trying to let the person know that you're on their side. At the same time, people receive compliments differently. I was telling Tammy that my mom had 6 sisters, and her dad, and I don't know what the philosophy was behind this, if he was trying to keep boys away from them, I don't know, but like he taught them that if someone gave them a compliment, that they were actually making fun of them. And so she had a hard time, like her entire life, receiving compliments as sincere. Like she really struggled
wow.
with that. Yeah. So I
How,
think in general that might be helpful in work, but it's not going to work with everyone.
how did she teach you about compliments? Because,
What a good question.
oh, thanks. You might need some time to think about it. I'll make a note.
Well, I think that it's probably like she didn't give compliments either.
Mm,
So I don't really know that she gave advice on receiving compliments. She never told me. She told me that story about her dad, and she never told me that. She never said if somebody gives you a compliment, they're making fun of you. But she struggled with compliments. So she was definitely one who would go more with the
mm,
like the opposite. Like I'll use this example, which sounds like a harsh example, but you know how much I, love my mom. She was my
yes.
best friend when she died, but she would always tell me, like, there was a lot of things where she would be like, you could be so pretty if, and like, so that if, like, if you wore your hair up, if you did this, if you did that.
Oh,
So there was no like compliments like, oh, you're so pretty, like that type of thing. So I think just your question about how she told me about compliments has opened this huge, this
wow.
huge door that sounds terrible. But it was just a struggle, and I know where the struggle came from for her. So
I'm glad you shared that though, because it really does go back to, and this is within the context of relationships, because parent-child relationships, but
mhm.
you loved your mom. Your mom was not perfect. And so when you look at the fact that she didn't compliment you, like my first response was, oh, no, she didn't compliment you. But then I'm also remembering that she's the woman who told you you can do anything,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
And I said she didn't compliment me, and I went there, but I think she did compliment me, like, and my sister, like in terms of we always felt like we were smart, like if that makes sense, like capable academically.
Yeah.
And she's who instilled that in us. So she would have had to have said some things that
Yeah.
fosters that. So I think she was probably very intentional. She wanted us to be very capable. She wanted us to be able to take care of ourselves. She
Hmm.
didn't want us to rely on like another person. And so I think she was probably intentional in how she guided that.
Well, then all is well. You can explore that in your next therapy session.
Okay. Yeah. So many therapies.
But it is, I mean, I never would have thought of anything like that had you not said that. And I think a compliment, the way that, let's phrase it a different way. So, the thing that I teach is this scripting tool called FIR. You've heard me talk about it before. We'll put it in the show notes, but it's fact, impact, respect. So, it's not necessarily a compliment, it's a respect statement. And then your request. And so, as an example, this has been years ago, probably 15 years ago. There was someone who was staying with us for a while in our house, and she made a snarky comment. We hadn't cleaned out our gutters in a while. And we lived, it wasn't the Woods house, it was another house, but we still had a lot of trees. And so there were little sprigs, growing out of the gutters. They needed to be cleaned. And she made this really snarky comment like, well, I love the garden that you have growing out of your gutters. And it wasn't the first time that she had made a comment. And it really hurt I was furious, right? I was furious. And I had been learning this tool. I think it was during the time period where I was doing the speaking for the seminar company, where I was like learning some of these communication tools. So I scripted it out in my head. And I can't tell you exactly, but it went something like, so the fact, I'm not telling you the words yet, but fact means like fact, not perception, not you were rude to me or whatever, because that's not a fact. And trying to use the word I. So I said, when I heard you say that you liked the garden growing out of my gutters. Okay, so it is absolute just restatement of the facts. And then the impact is like the so what? Like why did it bother me? And trying to tailor it so the person will hear you. Like if it's a business relationship and you have a boss that's very aggressive or a colleague, you might not want to say I felt, but in this case it was a friend and I said um, probably something like it really hurt my feelings, because I do the best that I can, with the house. I don't know what I said. And then the respect statement is just saying something sort of like when we talked about earlier, finding common ground or finding something about that person that's not bad. And so and that's true and that's relatable. So I probably said something about you are so creative and your home is always and your yard is always beautiful. And then the request. And I don't remember, of course, it's been a long time ago, but I'm sure I said, if you notice things in the future, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't mention it because I'm doing the best I can, something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that communication style better for sure.
Yeah. So, not just, I don't know. So, the example it gave here was start out with a compliment. For example, I know you're an intelligent person. I know you understand you did something wrong. I am counting on you not to make the same mistake in the future. I'm confident you won't do it again.
Like that, like
I want to do that to somebody and see how it goes.
I feel like that's not necessarily like a compliment. That almost like comes across really like condescending.
It does. Like, I'm confident you won't do that wrong thing again.
I know you're intelligent and you know
I
what you
know.
did.
It's like looking at Charlie and saying, you were a bad boy, my dog. So, anyway, the module overall has been great.
Yes, yes, wonderful.
I think maybe the communication piece is because that's not so much like a research I don't know. It's a little in addition to this is something you could do to build positive relationships, but they know what they did wrong. That wasn't good.
They're intelligent.
They're intelligent. You're intelligent people, you module writing people. So my intent before we get together next week. Now I'm not saying for sure that it will happen because I haven't looked at the test yet, but my plan is to take the assessment before next week and have my certification. But regardless, we're celebrating next week, right?
Yes, with food.
With food.
We're bringing
So
food.
so you watchers and listeners, if you we should have said this at the beginning. No, we are. Never mind. So next week, we're saying it now for next week before you sit down to listen or even drive to listen. You can go through Starbucks or whatever. Have something celebratory, whatever it is that you like.
And it brings you joy.
Whatever brings you joy. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm done. How about you?
Yeah, I think this was a great module.
Yeah, I did
I
too.
like the entire curriculum. It's
I
really,
did too.
really good.
I did too. And as a looking ahead, I think the next one we're going to do is the sleep one. So
Yeah.
we'll
So
look
many
over.
people struggle with sleep, so
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was 6 modules, but it's 10, just like this. And so I'm like, wow, what all is it going to include? So we'll look it over, and you all let us know. Are there topics that you would like to do? And and if you're interested in getting a certification in some way, I don't know what your background is, but anything we can do to help, we're here. Okay, well, it's Saturday morning. Let's say goodbye and thank you all again for being here, listening, watching, downloading, rating, reviewing, inviting people, all the things, following us on Facebook, all the things. It's all in the show notes. And until we see you next time for our celebratory Module 10, consider
yourself
hugged.
hugged. Bye.
Bye. Bye.